Hey guys, Spartan here, welcome back to another Loop Hero tier list. Probably only second one I can actually do, unless I want to do enemies, in which case I probably actually won't do that. So, I've sorted these by where you can place them on the map. We'll start with the ones that you could just place in the open nothingness, then we'll do roadside, then we'll do on the road, and then we'll do the one card that can be placed anywhere. So, let's start at the bottom. Meadow. This is one of the first tiles you'll probably ever place, aside from the tutorial. What it does is it heals your hero 2 points of HP per day if it's placed next to pretty much anything other than another meadow. That changes to 3. It's D tier because this is slow as shit, and in the end game it doesn't matter because it's a flat number. So yeah, not very good. Next up we have Rock, and Mountain. The difference between Rock and Mountain is Mountain gives more HP when it's surrounded by, like, rocks or mountains, but Mountain gives you no base HP on its own, so if you want to, like, use a rock to, I don't know, place it next to 4 meadows, it actually does something then, because Mountain does nothing. But yeah, it's a small amount of HP. You can transform rocks into mountains, or mountain peaks, by placing 9 in a 3x3 area. In which case it gives you more HP and spawns harpies, but harpies are generally very annoying enemies that you don't want to deal with. Rock is, unfortunately, also D. Also, much like last time, I will not be micromanaging each category. I'll be placing them in a category, and that's it. Forest. Forest/thicket increases attack speed by 1%/2%. This is an A tier because attacking faster is always good, except when you tire yourself out, but it can be dealt with by, like, you know, either having enemies attack you or using a class that really doesn't tire on their basic attack, aka Necromancer. Yeah, Forest, it's really good. Especially, does not peter out in the late game because it's a percentage base and not a base number. Well, in a sense. Desert. Desert reduces the HP of everything by 0.5%, and Sand Dunes reduces it by 1%. Desert, I'd say, is B tier. It's pretty good. Like, there are definitely builds that you don't want to use Desert with. Desert helps you go infinite with Rogue by making everything have, like, 0 max health by having, like, 99 deserts on the field and 99 Sand Dunes and 1 desert. But yeah, the only unfortunate part about Desert/Sand Dunes is you can't double its effect by placing it next to a river because it turns the river into an oasis, which has a different effect. Also, Deserts will turn forests next to them into Maquis, which is actually a really good card, because reducing enemies' damage at the cost of attack speed, or, yeah, reducing their damage and giving them attack speed is actually good for a lot of cases, mostly of which you have defense. Not good against Rogue, though. It's like a solely warrior thing. River is S. I mean, there's no doubt that River is, like, the best card in the game, pretty much. It just goes around the map, you swivel it around a bunch of thickets, and it just doubles the effect of any tile next to it. I know it doesn't double the effects of literally every tile, because you can place it next to some weird garbage, like, you can place it next to a, I mean, well, technically Battlefield, and it doesn't double the amount of chests it produces. It changes into a different thing, but yeah. River is pretty good. You should definitely run River on pretty much everything after you've unlocked it. Beacon. Increases your move speed, and does it increase the passage of day? I don't think it actually does. Just increases move speed, which is not a good thing. It means you cross the map faster, but it means that less days pass, so less enemies spawn, so you get less... Like, you loop faster, which is not a good thing. So, yeah, Beacon is D tier, unfortunately. Sorry, Beacon, but you kind of suck. Treasury. Treasury can only be placed when there's nothing adjacent it. And you surround it in a 3x3 area, and it gives you resources. And when you fully do that, it spawns gargoyles and gives you a bunch of resources. It's a C tier. It does give you a whole bunch of resources, but the problem is that unlike mountain peaks or something like that give you tons of noticeable change and other stuff like that, once you've placed a treasury and filled it up, you cannot Oblivion it and then place a new one in its place, because, I mean, then it has stuff next to it. It's not good in that regard. It's kind of a one-time thing, but you have it by default, so yeah, it's pretty much your only special card at the beginning. Storm Temple. Storm Temple is an interesting thing. I believe it works with the Marvelous Mirrors, or whatever they're called. It lightning strikes in vertical and horizontal from wherever it is, and it turns any forests and thickets that it is also in the range of into burnt forests, which, contrary to popular belief, are not actually good. They kind of really suck. Yeah, Storm Temple, it does something. If you have a bunch of mirrors and you're pretty much immortal and immune to magic, Storm Temple is actually pretty good. But, yeah, it's... generally, parallel effects that work for you and your opponent are not very good. So, unless, like, it's strictly in your advantage, but both units taking damage are not very good. Temporal Beacon. This speeds up the passage of day and adds watches to spaces that are in combat that are affected by it. Watches actually, like, for most of the time, will reverse the flow of day, meaning that the gain you get from placing temporal beacons is usually moot, except for the fact that watches do not like vampires, which is, I know this is like getting complicated, but yeah, you place this in range of vampires and stuff like that, and you get faster days, and progressing days faster is actually really good, because it means more fights, more loot, more stuff, and, I mean, if you have effects that work with days, hey, meta synergy, it's actually pretty decent. It gets B because it doesn't particularly do anything else that's interesting. Suburbs. It gives 1 extra experience for every enemy you kill while, like, per suburb on the map. And if you surround a suburb both horizontally and vertically in one space, turns into, like, a town, which is 2 experience. You can only place suburbs next to other suburbs if you already have them. This is A tier because getting experience really quickly is really good. It's one of the main ways people play, just fill half the map with suburbs, half the maps with, like, rivers, forests, and maybe deserts. Pretty decent. Next we have the Reddit moderator of of Loop Hero, Maze of Memories. It does nothing and takes up a lot of space. It is D tier. The one use this has is, of course, yeah, it takes up space, so it fills the boss bar faster. The thing with Maze of Memories, though, is that, it's a gold card, so if you're taking this, you cannot bring one of the other gold cards, and the other gold cards can be really good. But yeah, not Maze of Memories. It's terrible. Never bring it. Alright, roadside tiles. You have to place these by the road. Vampire Mansion. Spawns vampires on a 3x3 area around it. It has to be, like, combat already has to be, there. This, like, doesn't actually spawn baddies, it just adds them to fights. So, this has synergy with a lot of things, actually. You can place it next to a village and it will destroy it, spawning 4 ghouls for 3 loops. You can spawn it next to a broken down bookery, and the books that it will spawn will be vampire mages. And, it just has... It does more things. I can't think of them right now, though. Oh yeah, Watcher synergy. It scares away any Watchers. You can also use it on swamp fights, and the vampires will just add the lifesteal effect to everything on that space, but since it's a swamp, they'll damage them instead, so it's pretty beneficial. I'd like to consider Vampire Mansion as A, because even to this, like, after you've unlocked every card in the game, you will most likely still be running Vampire Mansion. That's saying something for a card you get right off the bat. Really good. Spider Cocoon. Spawns a spider every day. Spiders can be very annoying because they web you and they prevent you from taking actions in the high levels. And they have poison, which, you know, there's no escape from. One real, like, big downside of spiders is that they are living, but they don't have souls, so, minus synergy, or anti-synergy with a certain building that we will be running a lot. Spider Cocoon is a C because it actually does something, but so it's not, like, D tier. But Spider Cocoon, yeah, replace this as soon as possible. It's not very good. Road Lantern. Road Lantern reduces the maximum amount of monsters that can spawn on adjacent tiles in a 3x3 area by 1, and yes, it does stack. This is the main way that people go infinite. They just flood the roadside with road lanterns so that no enemies can spawn. It's actually pretty funny. But, yeah, Road Lantern is actually A tier because, first off, Road Lantern, just reducing the spawns of something you don't want on the board, like, yeah, maybe you can take, like, 3 mosquitoes in one fight, maybe you don't want 4 or something like that. Or you can, like, try to prevent the amount of blood golems you face on blood groves. Also, there's a item you can get in the supply wagon that increases your damage by 5% when near a road lantern. You can only use one of those, but it is... I mean, it's a straight up plus 5% damage when you're near a road lantern, and you can control where you place them. It does work on bosses too, so it's interesting. Chrono Crystals. Doubles the effect of a day's passing on adjacent tiles in a 3x3 area. This is honestly garbage. Like, why would you want this? Chrono Crystal, the main problem with is that it doesn't, like, you can't place it on anything that really matters. Like, oh yeah, it doubles the effect of a day's passing. Basically, it spawns enemies on tiles faster, and that's about it. Like, why? It doesn't even work on, like, treasuries or anything like that you can place it near. Okay, it can work on treasuries, but you need to be very specific in the placement. Meaning you probably won't want to do that. Yeah, Chrono Crystals, unfortunately, just does nothing. It's a card you get by the start of the game, though, so it's to be expected. It's not very good. Battlefield. Spawns a chest every loop, and enemies that die in adjacent spaces in the 3x3 area around the battlefield can turn into ghosts. If you overlap 2 battlefield, like 3x3 areas, it turns them into a blood road that spawns blood clots. Battlefield is actually S tier, in my opinion. Now, this is highly opinionated. Probably because I don't play Rogue much. If you play Rogue, you do not want to run Battlefield, because Rogue does not get loot from the chest, just gains sticks, which is absolute garbage. So, the thing with Battlefield is that it spawns a chest, obviously, you get good loot, and usually the space with the Battlefield can be, like, you can place anything on there. You can place a swamp, and in later loops, more enemies being on the same space that the chest is means more loot you get from the chest, which is actually really good. And ghosts are generally fairly easy enemies to kill. Maybe it's different for the ghost of a ghost, and of course there is always the threat of fighting Prime Matter, which is a very dangerous enemy, but that's a very low chance of that actually happening. And hey, if you kill it, you can get like one of these fantastic gold cards like Maze of okay, not Maze of Memories. One of the others that we'll talk about. But yeah, I pretty much always run Battlefield. Like, sure, you can get mimics and they're bad, but usually it makes up for it in the fact that the treasure is really good. Bloodgrove. Enemies and characters... Okay, so enemies that go below, I believe it's 15% HP, are killed instantly by the Bloodgrove, aside from flesh golems. But if the hero or his allies are reduced below 15%, they need to waste 1 attack to remove the Bloodgrove effect from themselves, which is pretty much that. Aside from the Necromancer can still summon and be affected by this. This is A, because usually the enemies are going to drop to low health before you do, unless it's a very bad situation. Even then, you only have to attack once in that one fight, and the Bloodgrove effect will not go on you again. Unless you heal and drop below low health again, but that's very... Actually, does that even work like that? I'm not sure. It's... I'd need to experiment with that. I don't think anyone knows. But yeah, Bloodgrove is really good. It spawns flesh golems, but flesh golems drop, like, orange loot pretty much always. So they're always worth killing. Flesh golems can be very dangerous in the later stages because they have, always get the last hit and they like to crit for, like, much damage. So yeah, be careful with them, but as long as you don't place too many in the same area, like double Flesh Golem, you should be fine. Smith's Forge. Takes your items and gives you a minus 10% damage received buff for each one taken, and I think it takes upwards of 10? Was it 10 or 5? Doesn't matter. Either way, it's a pretty decent thing. The only issue is that the monster it spawns has, granted, not much health, but it only takes 1 damage at a time, so it can be very annoying to take down. There is some synergy with if you place it on a swamp and there's a witch hut nearby, then the witch will pretty much just kill this thing. But yeah, Smith's Forge is very, very annoying. It's C tier. I wouldn't actually run it on anything, but you're free to. You can. Outpost. Outpost is a very confusing thing, as it has a different effect based on whoever you're playing as. If you are the warrior, it will spawn a guard to assist you, but the guard will take any, like, loot that isn't, like, common or blue. Which can be very annoying, like, if you place him against a boss, even if the guard dies before the boss is killed, the guard will still take the loot, which is very annoying. If you are rogue, rogue doesn't actually get loot from enemies, so there is no downside to using Outpost. This is just spawns an absolute loser to soak a few hits and maybe deal a few hits. So Outpost is really good for rogue. If you are playing Necromancer, then it instead shoots volleys of arrows at both enemies and you, meaning it's very confusing and probably not actually worth running. But, I mean, if you are the right class, aka Rogue, Outpost is, like, pretty good. It loses some points because it isn't very good with the other two. Bookery. Bookery allows for the swapping of 3 cards for 3 other random cards that you have in the deck, of course. When you pass by it in a vertical or horizontal 1 space. And after you do this for a total of 20 card swaps, it transforms into a broken down Bookery which spawns haunted books in a 3x3 area. So Bookery, I'm tempted to put this on S, but it's usually an A, because while it does give you random cards, it still abides by the rule of the rarity of the basic cards. Meaning that if you use a Bookery, and you're most likely to still get, like, deserts, forests, rivers, meadows, rocks, than you are to get, say, I don't know, treasuries or outposts or other cards that don't show up as much as others. Because, yeah, there is a rarity system in this game, in case you didn't know. That's why you don't see many swamps. Arsenal. Arsenal grants the warrior the use of the helmet, it grants the necromancer a shield, and it grants the rogue an amulet. But it reduces the power of everything by 15%. So, this is really good in theory, and really bad in some other ways. But overall, I consider this a positive effect, because, okay, you pretty much always run this when you're using Rogue, because Rogue's amulet, like, Rogue has very few ways of actually staying in the fight. And having the amulet to prevent Rogue taking basically any damage in small fights, so he saves up his health for big ones, is actually really good. Necromancer gains a shield, which isn't really that effective. It does prevent some damage, and it can get stuff like +1 max skeleton and junk like that. But Warrior doesn't get too much of a gain in comparison to, like, the losses of all the stats of everything else. But yeah, Arsenal, it's not bad. I'd say situational, but not bad. You would run this. Ancestral Crypt, though, is, oh, accidentally right-clicked. Don't want to do that in the video. Wait, where'd I put the, Ancestral Crypt? Okay. Here. Ancestral Crypt is S. Why Ancestral Crypt is S is it gives you the downside of you gain no HP bonus from armor. Now, this is pretty bad for some heroes. By some heroes, I mean Warrior and Rogue, because they both gain HP from armor. Necro doesn't. Like, I don't think Necro even has armor. It's a weird thing of Necro. But, yeah, this was definitely intended to use Necromancer. But this also makes up for the downside of that by having every enemy with a soul that you kill grants you a permanent +3 max HP. That is incredible if you're fighting enemies that have souls, aka not spiders. And most enemies actually have souls, so yeah, take note. Ghosts have souls as well. Also, enemies that like to swarm, aka mosquitoes, have souls, so just spawn a bunch of swamps if you can deal with the minus HP effect. But yeah, Ancestral Crypt is crazy. And we haven't even touched on the fact that it allows you to revive once with full HP. that is also incredibly good. There's a perk called Omicron's Technique that you use to clutch out wins. Ancestral Crypt just gives you that for free. Like, it didn't even need that, and Ancestral Crypt is already really good. So, onto the road tiles. You can only place these on the road. And we have Grove. Every 2 days it spawns a Ratwolf. Ratwolves are very annoying. They are immune to damage to all, and they bleed you in higher levels. Well, they have some niche use in the fact that you can use the skinning knife item, just carry a bunch of those, and you'll deal a ton of damage to Ratwolves and gain a bunch of resources. So, it has some niche use. The immune to damage to all effect can be really bad, though, in case you just want to kill enemies very quickly. But you do need damage to all for that. Cemetery spawns a skeleton every now and then. I forget the amount of days, so I'm just going to say it like that. So, Cemetery is not terribly good because skeletons have a lot of defense, meaning they're hard to break through, unless you're playing as Rogue, who has very high damage. Also, cemeteries can spawn skeleton archers, meaning that, like, you have to be very careful where you place Cemetery, as long as you aren't playing on, like, just Chapter 1, where there's no skeleton archers. Yeah, be careful with Cemetery, and have high damage. Otherwise, like, if you don't want to deal with those two things, just don't play Cemetery. It doesn't even give you particularly that great resources. It gives you memories if you have an upgrade. Village. Heals you a bunch when you pass by it on a loop, and gives you a quest, which gives an enemy plus 200% max HP, and you return, and you get an item, which is usually not worth it, but still. Village is B tier. It has synergy with Vampire Mansion, it spawns a bunch of ghouls and then gives you a bigger heal afterwards. Honestly, you're doing Vampire Mansion on Village, you should be doing it just to fight the ghouls, because they're very weak, and they give good experience, and if you're running Ancestral Crypt, they all have a soul. So yeah, pretty good. Wheatfields. Wheatfields heals you... I actually know how much this heals you. This heals you 5 times loop HP extra when you pass by a village, because you can only place this near a village. You can place this. You can place this by one of those a village things that the forest/thicket spawns when you have 10 of them. So yeah, Wheatfields, it's alright. It spawns Scarecrows or Field of Blades if you do not have a village next to it. No, Field of Blades if you don't have a village next to it, Scarecrow if you do. And they're very weird enemies. Scarecrows do damage to all, which I believe inflicts damage on its allies too. Scarecrow also scares away one enemy that is alongside the Scarecrow, which can be beneficial but usually doesn't matter. Like, it can scare away bandits, maybe. But yeah, it's a very weird card. Obviously, you're going to be running this in tandem with Village anyway. Also, I forgot to touch upon it, but Desert is only in B and not A because you can spawn Ziggurats very easily. Like, you only need 7 deserts or something like that to spawn them. Very annoying. Swamp. Swamp overall is B. There is a strategy that makes it really good, though, with Warrior and chugging potions and killing himself with his own vampirism. I'll put it in B for fairness because it's not particularly good for the other 2 classes. Considering Rogue always has lifesteal and has problems with healing, and Necromancer... Well, Necromancer doesn't have that much of a problem because he can heal, but... yeah. His healing is basically off residual heat. But yeah, Swamp, it spawns mosquitoes, and for every 3 swamps you get a Witch's Hut in your hand, which gives you a potion when passing by it. Which... Witch's Hut also reduces the maximum amount of potions you can have by 1, which is an oddity, but... if you have Alchemist Shelves, it doesn't matter, but you need to invest into Alchemist Shelves, otherwise Witch's Huts can be pretty bad. Okay, not really, but you just don't want to place too many of them. Ruins! Spawns worms, and you get a resource when you pass over it. The worms, aka Scorch Worms, can attack you at range, just like Skeleton Archers and stuff like that. Also, they can just retreat when they're low health instead of dying. Unless you have a Blood Grove nearby, in which case you can always kill them. Scorchworms drop a lot of loot, however. Like, they drop really good stuff. And you know what, honestly, I'd place it in A, but you have to use Bloodgrove with it. Otherwise, Ruins is a detriment to you. Also, be careful not to place it next to the boss, aka one in front or behind, otherwise you will get screwed over by getting bombarded by Scorch Worms. Last road tile, Zero Milestone. Increases the damage and just general power of creatures that are close to it, and... No, increases the power of those that are far away from it and decreases the power of those that are close to it. Does not work on bosses. So if you have like a complete gauntlet area, you can place a Zero Milestone in the middle, and you can just make the opposite side of the map just like a healing recovery village zone. It has uses, but it's a gold card, which means you can't take the other gold cards. I'd say it's a C, because at what it does, it's the best, but it's not something that's particularly good. And finally, we have Oblivion. Just remove something from the map. It can be placed anywhere because it needs to be placed on a card. It's A tier because it's good to get rid of stuff you don't want. Like, you can destroy bandit camps, you have to use this to destroy ziggurats. You can destroy goblin camps, and just anything that spawns. Like, if you're too overwhelmed, you can destroy enemies on the road, just to get rid of them. Can't deal with the flesh golem before the boss? Get rid of it! But yeah, that's pretty much the video. I hope you enjoyed. This one was a lot shorter than the other one because I didn't really need to go in depth about what the perks do, or what the cards do. I could have talked more about synergies, but I think I covered most of the important ones. Like, who actually needs to know about the synergy between, I don't know, swamps and the Frog King? Not particularly important. But yeah, this is probably the last video going to upload before I get my computer fixed, so yeah, sorry about the break I've been taking. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Don't know what it will be. I'll decide after I get my computer fixed. Till then, goodbye.